I'm about to watch the last episode of 4 seasons of The Tudors, the story about Henry VIII and his wives with and without their heads. And a lot of head lopping going on in those days. But it was interesting. I always liked watching period films like that, even documentaries about times like that. Because I think if we pay attention to days gone past and how we were as a species, and we can kind of see how we've grown and evolved, and some of ways where we have not grown and evolved, or we might possibly be regressing. But in those times, in the 1500s, a lot of people lived between a rock and a hard place. Even if you were invited to court and you were one of the people with titles, landowners, people who had money, who were invited to court, and you spent time with the king and the queen and the entourage and everything else. A lot of those people were between a rock and a hard place because you always had to kowtow to somebody's, well, the king, the reign of the king, and what he thought and what he wanted and what he required of people. And everything was political. Everything you did, everything you said, people were always watching you. It was like swimming in a shark tank. There was always blood in the water, always. Because people were always jockeying for position, and you always wanted to be safe if there was any safety there. I mean, you weren't even, obviously, if you were one of his wives, you weren't even safe then, because he ended up putting at least half of them to death, sent to the tower, and, some of them tortured. But, when you live like that, women were really, really subjugated. And if you were poor, you were. And there was just a lot of slaughter and a lot of talk about honor and a lot of titles. And, gosh, titles all over the place. His Excellency and Your Grace and My Lady and Your Majesty, and a lot of titles, and a lot of people jockeying for those titles, because the higher up you got, the safer you kind of felt. But it was all, like I said, an illusion, because it didn't mean anything if you weren't in favor. And I thought, what a way to have to live. And yet, our lives are not much different, because a lot of times we feel like we're between a rock and a hard place. A lot of times we feel like we're jockeying for position and wanting to find favor with someone. For decades, I was always trying to find favor with my father. I wasn't even living at home. For probably 10 or 20 of the years, I was still trying to find favor with him. It's interesting how being between a rock and a hard place can make you feel, and the things that it makes you do, and the decisions that you make. I kind of watched them, and how, people were willing to die for what they believed in, and you often did. You would die for God and country, and you were willing to go to war and go out in your yard and find a big stick and sharpen it up and run into battle with that and hope for the best and stand in the front lines. And I'm always amazed by that, how they would line people up, thousands of soldiers, and they would move forward, and you'd see the front line get cut down, second line cut down, third line, and they're just all getting shot, and they're just moving forward. And I think of what is that? It's got to be sheer terror. Sheer terror. And yet a lot of them were just out of that terror and within that terror, and because of that terror, screaming and running forward, but also knowing that there was something driving them forward, something that they believed in, or it's just fear. I think it's important that we figure out what our motivations are for things. It was uncanny how many times honor came up. Everybody was doing something for honor, because they loved and respected something, whether it was the king, their family, their name, where they came from, their lineage, the work that they did, Perhaps they respected their family, and it was for the honor of your family. There was one woman who her husband wasn't home, and these soldiers came up, and so they chased her down and assaulted her and killed her, and her husband goes to defend her honor. He finds those soldiers, and they end up killing him. It's just incredible what people went through, and we go through our own stuff. It's different, and it's not the 1500s. Or is it? I don't know. Because we metaphorically lop people's heads off now for things they say or they believe. We don't like what somebody says or believes, and we say, a lot of people lose their livelihoods, their jobs. They lose work because of what they believe or something they've said. And sometimes it's not something they said right away. I was reminded of when Kevin Hart was hired to MC the Oscars, and that was one of his dreams. And because of something he said 10 years prior to that, he lost that job. 10 years prior. He was probably a different man then. Maybe. I don't know. But somebody brought something up about something 10 years prior. And he lost one of the biggest gigs he ever wanted. So we're still chopping people's heads off. We're just not using those big, sharp implements, which might be even worse. I don't know. I don't know. But what are we motivated by? And are you paying attention to what you're motivated by? Or do you just do? Are you just out there plugging through your day and plugging through things that need to be done without thinking why you're doing them? Because I think the why is always important. The why. And if you don't know why, I think we have to find out why. Even the small things matter. Everything matters because everything is an investment in your life. And some moments that you had prior are now gone. We know how fast time is flying. Isn't it incredible? 1st of May is this week. Wednesday. 1st of May. And it feels like Christmas just ended. So here we are shuttling through our days, most of us with, one eye open. And I was guilty of that. And some days I still am. Because I'm just getting through the day. I'm just getting through. I got stuff to do. I got a lot of obligations. I've got work that has to be done. There's always something, even if it's not on my list of things to do, there's another 1,000 things I didn't write down. And every time I do something, it doesn't mean there's far less to do. That just means there's something else that jumps on the list. I have that app that I use on my phone to put down my list of things to do. And you can have subtasks for your task. So you not only have things to do, but you can list A through Z for thing number 1 on your list. What I happen to like about this app is that it will tell you how much time you have between tasks. If I say I need 45 minutes for one thing, and then at 3 o'clock I have something else that's a half an hour. If I have time in there, it'll say, oh, you have an hour and a half, and sometimes it'll say, do you want to take a break, or you want to add a task? Do you want to catch a nap? Or is there something else you need to do?
I know, and having that app doesn't even take the time. You're still ticking.
And so sometimes I opt to take the time off just so I can pay attention to my day, or pay attention to what's happening to me. Pay attention to where am I? Why am I doing what I'm doing right now? Am I even aware of what I'm doing, or am I just shuttling through? Am I just shuttling through? The older I get, the more precious life is. And I don't want to shuttle through anything anymore. Because we never know how much time there is, do we? We never know how much time we're going to have with people or with a particular thing. You could have a particular job and suddenly it's gone. You can be in a relationship and suddenly that's gone. Or everything seems good and happy with your world, and then you have a leak in the roof. Probably a lot of roofs got some leaks last night with all that rain we had. Or a tornado comes through. Or a hurricane. Or you're in a car accident. Or you get scammed, or you're the victim of a crime. Stuff happens. And I think it's still important to pay attention to what's happening and why am I here where I am? Have I contributed to what's happening right now? Or is life happening and I get to choose how I respond? Because sometimes stuff just happens. Stuff rolls into our experience. We didn't ask for it. We didn't call for it. It just happened. And we get to choose what's happening. How am I going to experience what's going on here and now? And then we get to choose how we think about that thing. Am I between a rock and a hard place? Do I want to consider it a rock and a hard place? We talked, I don't know if it was last week or prior weeks, about calling God in to a situation. And therefore, we get to change that situation for ourselves. We get to change the situation for ourselves. So what was a few minutes ago a rock and a hard place might be a challenge. A challenge that you need to think about. How am I going to navigate this? How am I going to navigate this? Or do I just tap out and say I'm not dealing with it? I've had some things happen where I just said, I'm just going to put the blinders on. I don't care. I don't have it right now. I don't feel like it. I'm tired. Nope. I'll look at it tomorrow. Like Scarlett O'Hara. Some days I don't want to worry my pretty little head about it. And so I choose not to, and I choose to do it later. Maybe when I have more energy. Maybe when I have more willingness to bring God into the situation. And that's dealing with it. That's my way of dealing with it in the moment. That's my way of finding even some respite by not dealing with it, by deciding this is a non-issue for me at this moment in time. And I get to not look at it if I don't want to. But if I continue to do that, then there might be a bigger rock and a hard place on either side. Because you can stick your head in the sand for only so long. Or forever. A lot of people live their lives with their heads in the sand. Just letting life roll over them. I don't know if it's the easy way. Some days it sounds easy, doesn't it? Just to check out. Not adult, as they say. I'm not adulting today. I choose not to deal with this. I choose not to deal with people. I'm not peopling at the moment. All of them are choices. All of them are choices. I think I'm opting more often, I know I am, for God. Because even in the worst moments, when I bring God into the mix, and usually it's just playing with my own consciousness around what's just in the moment. And I stop thinking about the challenge or how I'm feeling, whether it's physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And I just think, God is always present. God's always present. And sometimes I have to say it over and over again. God's always present. And then my next thought is, so that means God is here in this moment. God's here in what I'm feeling. God's here in what's happening. God's here. God's here. I might look around. Yep. God's here. Okay, God's here. And I check in with myself, and I can feel myself starting to come up to a higher frequency. Even if it's just to know that there are possibilities now. That kind of pushes me up away from the rock and the hard place, from feeling the squeeze of life. Invoking God and God presence. The squeeze is less. And at some moments we just want the squeeze to be a little bit less. When your chest isn't so tight. And you can breathe better. And everything's not quite so dark. God is always possibility. Excuse me. God is always possibility. As soon as you invoke God, everything gets to open up. Everything. Give my throat a minute. And when we have possibility, there's hope. And even if you're lost among the stars, you can see the stars. And perhaps you don't feel as lost. And you're connected to that God, with the sand going through his fingers. And maybe you see yourself as one of those grains of sand that God has its hand on, in and through. And if we stay open long enough, then we can start feeling that divinity that we are and have more power. Or harness the power we already have that we had when we were feeling low, but didn't feel, or didn't recognize, didn't embrace, or didn't want to look at, because sometimes I don't want to see my power. Because I'm just kind of satisfied feeling low. But I always know I'm not going to stay there. But sometimes I want to rest there. And that's okay. For us to let ourselves rest in place. There's never anything wrong with it. I think in New Thought and Unity, that we think negatively about that we should always be up. We think that we should always be invoking our power. And yes, we have that power, and yes, we can always invoke it. But sometimes we just need to be where we are and feel God there. Feel God there. It's all God anyway. If God is omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent, and God is everywhere, there's nowhere that God is not. And so in what we call the low places, there is God. And because it is all God, that all there is spiritual, there really is no low place. There's just a place where we are tuned out from the good, from God consciousness, where we've got our blinders on, either consciously or unconsciously. And we get to call it back in. We get to lift up the shades and let the light in. And really our lives are, as we're journeying through, as Mark was saying, we're either opening the blinds or closing them, or somewhere in between. We got those two cords. We got a little bit less light, more light, less light, more light. No light at all. Slats are all closed. All the way down to the bottom of the windowsill. No light coming in any side. Curtains closed. Right? The darkening curtains. And we blocked out the light. But it doesn't mean the light's not there. It just means we've blocked it out. Consciously or unconsciously, again. Sometimes, again, we got to be careful of our motivations. What are we doing? What are we thinking? What are we invoking? Where are we in our consciousness? And are you aware that you're the one who can turn on the light, who can embrace the light? I just saw this commercial the other day. And for the life of me, I don't know what they were selling, because a lot of commercials, you don't know what they're selling anymore. They're just crazy, and you think, but what I heard was, you are the main ingredient. You are the main ingredient. I don't know, they might have been selling burgers. I don't know. I don't know. You are the main. You're turning on the light or turning it off. You're seeing it or not seeing it. You're invoking it or not invoking it. You are embracing it or not embracing it. Consciously or unconsciously. And the more we are aware, the more that we are in daily practice of meditation, the more aware we are of what's happening in our lives without having to do a lot of work. Because that's what meditation does. It's one of the benefits of meditation. It just makes us aware of what's happening. It sharpens the mind, the soul, the heart, and even the body. It makes us better at living. It gives us a greater capacity to live. And in moments where you used to be clueless before, now you got a clue. And you can decide to pay attention to the clue or not. There's the rub right there. You get conscious, and then you're looking at it, you decide to ignore what's in front of your face because you don't want to go there. And that's all right too. I've always told you, no matter what you decide, whether you decide to check out of life, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, or whatever, you're still love. You're still divine. You're just living out of alignment with who you truly are. You're just living out of alignment, which you can do. We have free will. God said, here, I give you dominion over everything. I give you all this power to create a life that you want. Do with it as you will. Do with it as you will. You can grow and evolve beyond your wildest dreams. Do with it as you will. But man, that's a moment-by-moment thing. It's not the big things. It's not the big crusades. It's the moment-by-moment choices. Those little moments make larger moments. And then you make a life. Or a season of your life, or a chapter of your life. So we're here again at this spot where you get to decide what you're going to do, who you're going to be. Will you shine your light brilliantly or not? Will you use all the excuses that you could possibly use? And a lot of us have a lot of excuses we could use for not shining brightly. You can even make some up. We have free will to be in denial, to live in an illusion, to lie to ourselves, to rationalize stuff. A lot of us go there too. All of us have been there at some time or another, have lied to ourselves about what's happening. Life can be blissful, wonderful, joyful, fulfilling. Every single moment, even if there's stuff going on, even if the rock and the hard place are surrounding you, we can choose goodness in those moments. But it takes work. It takes spiritual work. It takes a willingness to want to shine your brightest all the time. And you don't have to worry about it all the time. You just have to worry about this next moment. The now. The now. Am I going to shine now or not?
I love cleaning fish. I do. I love cleaning fish.
Where'd that come from?
That's true. I mean, we just decide, some people say, ooh, that's so nasty, but whenever we catch them, I can clean a fish and just be in just total bliss.
I'm happy for him.
Yes, what a choice.
Pete manifests the zen of cleaning fish.
But it's true.
I'm happy for you. I'm in the zen of eating fish. That's my happy place. You can clean the fish, we'll come eat it. So we get to choose, you got free will, but we've got this free will that's tied up in all the light you ever could imagine that you are. And even at your lowest points, you are that light. You're one of the stars. You're one of those stars, even at your lowest point. So there is no low point. We just feel low. We need to crack those blinds open or rip the blinds off the window and just let the light shine through. Always. Always. Why would you ever want to cut yourself off? Or try to? Why? And yet we do. And yet we do. I do it, each of us does it. No, there is always light. There's never just the rock and the hard place. There's always hope in every situation. There's always possibility because there is always God. There's always God. Let's take this into meditation. There's always God. Mentally, it's hard to wrap our heads around omnipresence. It's hard for the brain to comprehend that we are surrounded by, supported by, and living as love. Always. In each moment. So imagine you're standing on a beach, looking at the horizon, looking at where it seems the sky and the ocean meet. And all there is this huge expanse of blue. And not only is the blue in front of you, the blue sky, the blue water, but you are enveloped by that blue. You're surrounded by it. There's just blue light underneath you, behind you, over your head, in front of you. And you can even feel this blue light penetrating your skin. And the blue light is permeating bone and muscle and tendons and organs. You can see that blue light streaming through your circulatory system, feeding every single cell of your body. Everywhere you look is blue. The blue light of eternity. Blue light that is God energy. And that blue light is the most comfortable temperature ever for you. There's no chill. It's not hot. The blue light is like substance, like food. You're not hungry. You need nothing. There's this feeling of gratitude all over you, all through you, because you know you have everything in that moment. Everywhere you look, all you see is that blue light. Every person you look at is radiating blue. Everything that you see before you, whether you previously deemed it ugly or beautiful, is infused with this blue. And if you could see down into the earth, you would still see that blue light. permeating Earth's core. Layers and layers of rock, stone, liquid, gases, all of it blue. There's just this vastness of blue, and you are captivated by it. Knowing that you have no existence outside of that blue. Knowing that everything you've ever wanted is within the blue. Everything you've ever dreamed of, everyone you've ever loved and still love is in the blue. Everyone that ever lived is in the blue. Everyone that will ever be is in the blue. Every answer you've yearned for is in the blue. And in this moment, you've never been happier, never been more content. You've never been more grateful. Your heart's never been fuller. This again is home, the blue. The blue light representing God, God power, God love, God peace, God joy. God vitality. All things right here, everywhere you look, is God. And your heart's overflowing. Your heart is absolutely overflowing. You can barely contain yourself. For there is no containing you. And you lose a concept of you as separate from the blue. You are the blue, and the blue is you. You are the light, and the light is you. You are that peace, and the peace is you. You are the peace. And the peace is you. And so we say yes and thank you for a God that is omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent. And that we are extensions. We are expressions of that light. We are the main ingredient of light. One life, one God, one breath. One light, one God, one breath. And with each breath, we invoke our God selves. We invoke God life and light and love and peace and strength and power and vitality. And with that, we step into life. And so it is, and so it shall be. Amen.